Okay, welcome everyone to the cert-manager bi-weekly development meeting on the 23rd of March 2022. It's 5 o'clock London time, and we've got a few items on the agenda today, so sweet, it should be a pretty good session. I don't really know how much value there is in us doing a round robin and introducing ourselves, since almost everyone on the call is from JetStack and works with each other on a daily basis. I'm not sure how to say your name, I'm afraid. Tatagata?
Actually, it's Tathagat, but I am fine with that. There's no problem.
Tataga, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So, hello everyone. My name is Tathagat Paul. Currently, I'm a pre-final year undergraduate at Indian Institute of Information Technology, Gwalior. And today I'm here to attend this dev call so that I can be introduce myself to the community and also be a part of this open source project. Looking forward to working with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's great to have you. So yeah, I guess we can jump straight into it. And conveniently, I'm the first person on the list, so I can jump straight into it. So I wrote something here because of an issue that was raised this week. It was the first email we've had to our cert-manager security mailing list. I will put a link to that issue in the document. Essentially, this person had run a vulnerability scanner against a recent release of cert-manager, and it came back with several severe vulnerabilities because of the version of Go that cert-manager was built with. I looked into all of these, and I couldn't see any reason why we should panic about any of them. Like, you'd have to squint pretty hard at them to think of an exploitable way of doing any of these things, and some of them were just completely irrelevant entirely. But I think it raises an interesting question about how we handle this stuff, because I had no quick way of determining the version of cert-manager that was used to build those things. Like, it wasn't obviously documented anywhere in a clear way. Like, obviously I could find it, but like, it wasn't easy. And it's quite a lot of churn to actually build a new version. Like, I've spent a lot of time today doing just that, and I've been thwarted by GitHub as it happens and their outage, but still it's kind of a painful process. And I don't really know how. I guess I just wanted to talk about how we could do this better, you know. One thing that jumped out at me is with the new makefile flow, it's quite easy to change entirely the Go version we have, as it was with Bazel, to be fair. But equally, it's now easy to change the metadata file that we build, that we populate with all the SHA hashes of our release artifact. One thing I thought would be nice is to embed the version of Go that was used during the release inside that metadata file, because we use the same version for everything. It seems like an easy win for identifying stuff, just to have the data there. But that's a fairly minor thing, and that's still requires sort of a manual check to realize when something has been a new vulnerability's come out. The way we kind of deal with it so far is, I think enough of us are subscribed to people on Twitter who tweet about new Go releases that if there's a vulnerability, we'll probably see it, but that's not really the most repeatable way of doing it. If anyone has any suggestions, maybe?
Does Dependabot tell you about vulnerabilities in the Go version itself, if we enabled it?
I've not seen that. I'd be surprised if it could infer that in a meaningful way.
It's not in the Go mod file, is it? The patch version or anything?
Yeah, I mean, it could inspect the assets that are attached to a release, but that's going to need it to like untar many things, and I can't believe they would do that.
Kind of a side note, but I imagine that with Go 118, where you have like all this capability to like debug and like kind of debug binaries, there will probably be tooling written that would be of the kind that could check, like, given that you have a Go binary and a set of vulnerabilities, whether your binary actually calls that code. Do you know that? But yeah, I guess there probably we want to look at the code.
Fair point.
Go 118 embeds more information about the Go runtime into the binary, doesn't it? By default.
Am I always looking at that?
Yeah. Just embeds the Git or VCS metadata. That's what I know.
Helpful still. I suppose depending on what tool the person who raised the issue was using, we can always run scanners against cert-manager bills, just like take the binaries and scan them as a sort of a periodic thing. And maybe stuff like that just gets added when the make migration is done because it'd be easy to do. But yeah, I don't really have a great deal of suggestions to make here, but I guess I'm kind of, in a way, I just want to hope that people think about it, like spark a thought, and maybe someone will have a good idea on it. I do like the idea of adding the Go version into the metadata file when we build the metadata file, and I might just do that.
So do you think any Go update with a CV in is worth just releasing a new patch release straight away?
I don't think I would say that, no, because some of the time it's just going to be horrendous churn for no reason. Like it's hard when the tool is reporting a vulnerability as catastrophic, it's hard to ignore it for people, even when it's completely not exploitable in any way.
And I guess you'd also want to know actually when it's catastrophic, and then when it actually is catastrophic for us, and then release extra fast.
Yeah.
Hopefully never happen, but
yeah. I don't really have much more to suggest on it, to be honest.
Sounds like a good dev day idea
Yeah.
to play around with it for.
It could well be, yeah. I'll leave it up in the air. Like, if anyone has any ideas about it, then I'm sure there's plenty we can do. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of like low-hanging fruit in this space as well. But
I wonder, like, I mean, we were talking about forking Go version that does many things, the CLI tool. I wonder if would something like this not fit into that? Something that could like compare a list of CVs with, look at your binary and check if it's maybe not. I don't know.
it might be worth asking on that ticket what tool they are using, because I guess it's doing something similar to what Go version does to like infer the Go version.
Yeah,
like in the binary.
Go version looks at the, well, at least one of the things it does, it looks at the symbols, and it just that way determines what code is actually being called. I would definitely be interested to play around with it for half a day.
If that's what comes out of this, then it was worth raising, I think. Yeah, I think it's probably worth us moving on. I don't know how much more we're going to do on this. It's worth me saying in this call, like, I'm just finalizing the release of 1.6.3, which bumps the version of Go we build with, and GitHub issues aside, that's gone through. I'm going to do 1.7 this evening if I can get the end-to-end test to pass, which I think is being burned by GitHub as well. I'd like to do 1.8 as well, but like I'll probably be up until like gone 11 if I try and do that, just because I can't get GitHub to do anything. Like, it keeps on reporting a PR that I know has merged as being open. So the progress is slow on that front, but we will get there, and hopefully they'll both be done by the end of the day for Americans, maybe. The next topic was Jake with a DNS01 challenge overhaul. He's also the one that's taking notes, so thanks to him for that. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, so this was just brought up yesterday on /today. So currently our DNS challenge support is really quite poor, I think, and it's never going to get better because we don't really want to maintain DNS providers inside cert-manager tree, because the only sane way to maintain a provider is to have constantly running end-to-end tests for it, and we'd need an end-to-end test for every cloud. So someone in Slack, in the community Slack, pointed out that, like, why don't we just offload the handling of DNS challenges to an external library? And they showed a Python library called Lexicon, which is used by ACME.sh and maybe some other places. Because basically, someone else maintains every part of it that is relevant to their particular cloud, and people wanting to solve ACME challenges can just call it. So I think we should do something like that. And I made an issue to explore it, but that's about as far as I've got so far. So any comments or thoughts?
There is what about Go? There is a Go library like that called Lego, right?
Yeah. So that's the one I put in the issue. I said we should just make a Lego solver. But I had a more in-depth look at that in the last hour, and it only accepts config from environment variables, which is a little bit sad for us because we want to store our config in issuer CRDs. And if the code paths in it always call os.getenv, so you'd only be able to have one issuer per like globally for your cert-manager thing,
Right.
which is a bit sad.
I think when we may have discussed it once before as well, and I seem to remember someone saying that the Lego library is very synchronous. It doesn't fit well with our asynchronous contact. Let's encrypt. Wait for them to wait for the order to be ready and the challenge to be accepted and all that stuff.
I think that's okay because we would only be using the DNS provider interface that they have, which just has the present record, delete record, which is all we actually need. But it would require a tiny bit more code than I wanted just to create configs basically, and it would be a maintenance burden, which I didn't want to do. The whole point of shipping it out would be to of handing it off to a different library, that we don't have to maintain it. So my next idea was we just dogfood our own webhook and make a Lego webhook, and then people could pass environment variables to each. They could deploy one webhook for each cloud they were trying to solve challenges against, and then just give that in the environment variable credentials that they needed. One issuer per one webhook per issuer they needed, which is probably also okay. But whatever we do, I think we should ship it with cert-manager and then deprecate all of the internal issuers, because we can't really maintain them anyway.
Do you mean it would be another container, another binary? Or do you mean we would ship the whole of Lego?
No, we would write a webhook solver that was just using the Lego config underneath.
Okay, so it would be, you would have to separately deploy it.
Yeah, but then
Oh,
that
that's
might be
fair.
better. That might be better because you need to give Lego credentials in environment variables. So having one of these webhook deployments per cloud provider you were trying to use might be more desirable anyway.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea. If it's well integrated with Helm chart, then we would maybe make it as easy as right now, as easy to use. So if you don't use a DNS solver, you don't need this special webhook with special configuration. If you do need it, then yeah, it's a nice way of handling this. Do we know how many people are using the DNS01 solver generally?
I don't know, but I do know every time someone complains a webhook isn't working because it's unmaintained, as in someone else wrote a cert-manager webhook provider, and then someone turns up and says, "Oh, I tried to use," like there's a Microsoft Active Directory one that people say were using, and it's now archived and unmaintained, and they turn up and say, "Oh, it's this looks really good, but how do I use it because it's unmaintained?" And we look at them and go, "I don't know, I didn't got nothing to do with it."
Ah, yeah, and remember, I was talking a long time ago. I was talking about external DNS and doing the same thing. So this won't be necessary to do the bridge between external DNS and cert-manager anymore with this.
So how would the config be provided to each one of them, as opposed to being in an issuer?
So you'd say issuer, the ACME, and then the solver block with DNS01. You just have webhook, and then you can register your own kind of API version or whatever it's called. So for each solver you wanted, you could deploy a new one of these Lego webhooks, call it something different, and then reference it. I haven't looked that closely because I only started looking at this a couple of hours ago.
I like this approach.
Maybe, I guess, because this is a kind of a rubber duck session for my ideas now. Maybe we would just keep the webhook solver, deprecate everything else, and then have this separate Lego resolver, and then document how to use it. And then, if for some reason you weren't able to use one of the, I think it's like close to 80 providers that Lego supports, you can still write your own webhook, but then you're really on your own. I mean, which is the same as what you have to do now. You have to write your own webhook.
When you say deprecate everything else, you mean just the DNS solvers that we have now in tree?
Like the
which
Azure.
would break our API compatibility promise completely.
No, we just leave it there, and then we say these are deprecated and won't receive any more updates.
So we would keep maintaining the solvers, or we would just like make the code unused.
I mean, we could leave them there. I don't know about committing to fixing them if they break. Because like right now we don't even maintain them really.
No, we don't.
The AWS solver was fixed by someone who said, "Well, I've tested it and it's fixed for me, but we don't really test it."
I would adore it if we could start to trim off some of the dependencies we have for this kind of thing. Like if all of our stuff just goes through Lego, that would be sick. I think that's probably a long way down the road, but oh my god, if we could do it, it would be great.
Oh, well, I guess I just wanted to talk about it. It sounds like it's probably a good idea, and we should think about it. But I won't have time to look at it for at least another week or two.
Yeah, I can't think of any downside to it, apart from like the whole XKCD, 15 standards. You create a new one, and now you've got 16 standards. Like, but probably like we can be aggressive with deprecation, can't we? And then it's just all happy days.
So I feel like, for example, how assuming that there is a bug in one of the Lego whatever solvers, will we be able to do it somehow so that we don't need to release a new cert-manager in order for people to use the updated version of Lego? If we, if we deploy separate.
It'll be a separate image, so we could just have a completely separate, and you just make it part of the Helm chart, like Mail said. Just have a like webhook solver image.
Sounds awesome.
Cool. I'll look at that, but it won't be for a week or two, unless someone else picks it up, because it's just an issue on GitHub. Anyone could pick it up, including community.
Yeah, sounds really good. Super enthusiastic about the idea of it. Anyone else have anything else wanted to say on that, or shall we move on? Silence means we'll move on. The next item on the agenda doesn't have a name on it, so whoever wrote override self-check, now's your time.
Okay, it was me again. This was just because we brought it up last month in the previous meeting I was in, and I said maybe we will add the ability to override the self-check propagation for both like HTTP and DNS challenges now that we have exponential backoff merged. So I was just going to bring it up again. This is a really, really highly requested feature because a lot of other ACME clients allow it. So the ACME spec says you shouldn't try and request that the ACME server solves a challenge until you think it will be ready to solve. So we do this by doing a self-check. So if it's an HTTP1 challenge, we make an HTTP request to the domain and try and get the challenge. And if it's a DNS01 challenge, we try and resolve the record that we created and see if it's there yet. But there's a bunch of stuff with hairpin NAT and internal split DNS that means that this doesn't always work for people. And they keep asking for a way to override the self-check and just do it. And when we talked about this a few days ago, or even a few hours ago, I can't even remember anymore. I think the kind of official EFF certbot client just waits 30 seconds. So maybe we could have a field on the solver block that just says override self-check after, and then put you can put a duration in there. Does that sound sane?
Say the name of the field again.
So inside the solver block, we could just have a duration that says like override self-check after, and then some duration.
So it would self-check for the first 30 seconds, and it would give it if the self-check passed, it would allow things to proceed early.
Yeah.
But if you set it up to ignore the self-check after 30 seconds, it would go ahead anyway.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds a good idea.
With backoff there and implemented, it seems super unobjectionable to have this, right? Like, probably it's better to have self-check working in some capacity, but if you're that determined to turn it off, like as long as we're sure that it's not going to spam anyone, which we know it won't now, like it seems like an obvious toggle to have an option.
And it is the case that if the record's actually not available, the ACME server will return 4xx error, because that is the only case when the backoff kicks in. It doesn't kick in if it returns another type of error. Another
It-
error code.
Is that a question, or have you looked? Are you
A
stating-
question, I haven't looked at it.
I would be astonished if it doesn't return a 4xx. Like
Yeah,
ACME's pretty good with the HTTP error code, aren't they?
Sounds good.
Admittedly, my astonishment, I've been astonished before, so it's worth checking. But like I would be very surprised. I think the vibe I'm getting from this item, as with the DNS01 challenge stuff, is like everyone's positive about it. No one really has anything negative to say, and consensus is it's good. Like that.
And JetStack should do this work. I think JetStack should do this work.
So you're saying like we should prioritize it soon?
Yeah, it seemed like that the person who joined our stand-up yesterday. I don't know whether he went away thinking that we were expecting him to do this.
He's been posting today about working on DNS over HTTPS to do this a different way.
That's an alternate self-check.
Yeah, like, but we could have both. I think both would be valuable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I quite like the idea of an alternate self-check because, like, in the ideal situation, you always want a self-check.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything else they wanted to talk about on this, or shakes of the heads? Cool. The last item on the agenda, I'm sorry if you just heard a banging noise, the car going past, is Google Season of Docs. Again, without a name. Mael, you nodded. Richard?
I put the item in, but it's a joint effort between me and Mail. We sat down last week and started writing a proposal for the Google Season of Docs. We've put a pull request up on against the website, which contains the bare bones of the proposal, but I've linked in the agenda for this meeting the more complete notes that we took in a Google Doc. Well, we've got to submit the proposal tomorrow, and as it stands, it is a proposal to we are what's the word? We're going to request funds from the Google Season of Docs organization to fund a technical writer to help us with the reorganization of the cert-manager IO website. And we've we sat down and we looked at the documentation from Google and documentation from Microsoft on technical writing style, and how, and particularly Microsoft had a good document which prompts you to answer some questions about why you want to reorganize your website and how. So we sat down and in our meeting, Mail and I answered some of those questions, and those are in the linked document. Such as who are the audiences that you're trying to write the documentation for, and for each of those audience groups, what tasks do you think they will want to carry out? So we've done that. We've written our thoughts on that as lay people. We're not technical writers. We haven't included any of that in the Google Season of Docs proposal, because we suppose that the technical writer who comes on board, if our proposal is accepted, will want to do this analysis themselves. What else shall I say, Mail? We thought about business goals. That's another of the things that the Microsoft guidance asks you to think about. we said we'd like whatever the reason we're doing this is to increase the visibility of the cert-manager project and to decrease the number of support requests on Slack and GitHub. Those are two advantages we could think of. Hopefully we make it so that contributors and users and cluster administrators are more easily able to find the information that they would otherwise ask us on Slack. And often we'll find no answers forthcoming unless we happen to be online at the time. So there'll be, our users will hopefully be more satisfied. And then we thought briefly about how we would measure the success of the project, and we thought that a 20% increase in visits might be something to aim for. Although then I think we revised that. We can't really see any reason why reorganizing the website structure should increase the number of visits, except perhaps that people will, the new content will prompt people to revisit the website and reread, read the content again, whereas if they visit the website and it looks exactly the same as it last did, then they're less likely to keep coming back. And a better measurement of success that Mail came up with was that somehow or other we might identify one or two of these key tasks, putting ourselves in the position of a user or a cluster administrator or a contributor. And for each of those audiences, we'd say, here's a task that we'd like to find more out about. And how many clicks does it take for us to find the information we need, all of the information we need to complete that task right now? That would be the baseline. And then hopefully after the reorganization, we'd be able to do the same exercise again and find that there were fewer clicks involved. And perhaps we should aim that there will be no more than, say, 3 clicks to achieve any of the key goals that we chose. I'll stop talking. Is there any comments or any questions or suggestions? Anything I've missed, Mail?
Yeah, everything that's what happened. I think we should go forward with this. As I said this morning, it's missing a budget. And as I said this morning also, I think the budget we put is too high. So again, it's 13,000. I wish to, I have no idea, like, how can you measure how much time is going to be required to do this analysis and then restructuring? But I would assume we can request 9,000 or something like this, which would be more like it.
We can look at previous proposals, previous accepted proposals, and see how much, what their requested budgets were.
Yes.
For similar projects.
I'll take a look tomorrow before we submit it, so that we have a budget that sounds correct. Thanks, yeah. Richard, for doing this.
Sounds great. Do you need anything from any of us, or before tomorrow?
No, I think we've got enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like there's definitely been a theme today where every item has just been like this entirely unobjectionable good thing that everyone supports. It's nice. Thank you guys for putting the time into this. Like, I wouldn't have even known this was happening. The season of doc stuff, like, it's great.
It's a bit different to the summer of code. Like Mail says, there's this concept of figuring out the budget for the project. With the summer of code, well, at least last year, we just proposed something, a student or two accepted, was interested in our proposals, and they were accepted, and then Google paid them somehow. We didn't have to think about how much they got or how long the project. We had to think a little bit about how long the project lasted, but this seems to be structured. The summer of docs, the season of docs seems to be structured a bit differently than the summer of code.
Will we get like also someone who is interested to become a technical writer, or someone who's already a technical writer?
That's a good question, and I think we'll going. It's the same as with the Google Summer of Code. You decide, or the project decides, which submissions, which technical writers are going to be working on cert-manager. But I do not know if there are professional technical writers or not. I do not know. But at least what I know is that they will be focused on documentation, whether they're professional or not.
Yeah, because
that's
in this
already
case,
a good thing.
I mean, we can like review people's code, but I don't feel. I'm not sure if I can necessarily review technical writers' work that much, because I'd expect them to know it way better than I do. You know what I mean?
Yes. So what I could do to answer this is take a look at the previous submissions, previous technical writer people that were accepted by projects, and see if these people were previously technical writers or not. We could take Josh Soref.
I'm sure he'd do a good job of it. I'm sure he would.
Actually, there is a stipend. We can choose to have a small stipend for 3 different contributors, or 3 or more. He could be one of them with all his spelling fixes.
The possibilities are endless. Are we maybe coming towards the end of this section?
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems awesome. All good stuff. I just added another item as turning this bi-weekly meeting into a therapy session for me and my woes with GitHub. Like, what the link I'm going to share is Jetstack internal, because our Helm charts are hosted on Jetstack internal stuff. But why is this not working? What button do I press to make this do the test and pass? Because it's clearly going to pass, and why isn't, like, I'm guessing there's just for context for anyone watching this back, there's a check that we have to make sure that our home chart index is valid. And because GitHub has had issues today, it didn't get told that it was valid by whatever was checking that. And now it's just waiting for status to be reported and isn't ever going green.
Can't you just like do GitHub style approve and it will do something? Or that's not the case?
I already approved it, and it won't. It says required statuses must pass before merging. But I don't know how to kick it off again. Jake, you're muted. If you were talking there.
Sorry,
my actions yesterday when GitHub was down. Sorry, Jake. I'll just say this. The actions were terribly delayed. So like it did all the changes that should have triggered actions, which didn't yesterday. The actions this morning had taken place. So could just be a matter of waiting longer.
This has been over an hour. Like, is it really that long? Is
GitHub healthy again?
It says it is now. I'm not sure I believe them.
Once I just press close and reopen.
It should be healthy, because the PR that I LGTM'd half an hour ago got merged.
Jake, I think I was going to say that what you just said. When I'm doing this I have this problem with the OLM packages for Red Hat. I have to close the PR and then reopen it, and that often triggers re-triggers the actions.
I can't believe there isn't a button to do to just say like, hey, do this again. Closing and reopening. Hasn't changed anything yet. But this is going to be a very boring end to the call if I just narrate on the updates on this issue. I'll just keep on poking it until it works. Like, this is yeah. So that was the last item on the agenda. Does anyone have anything else that they wanted to talk about? Silence means no. There's no hurried unmuting, so I'll call that the end of it. Thank you everyone who attended. Thank you anyone who's watching, and yeah, have a nice evening, day, everyone on the call. See you all later. Now you get to watch me awkwardly stop the recording.